And welcome back to the next episode of the Fit Affiliate podcast, joined again by the one and only Tony. And I feel like life's back to normal this week. We're back in our usual podcasting positions.
Wi-Fi is back to normal. Internet's stable. We are back in the black hole.
Nice. We will miss having drop-ins from, Ernie and Beatrice, the fur babies, but we can deal with this.
They can still happen. They don't like to come up to this. I'm in the mezzanine, so they don't like to come up here for whatever reason.
Yeah, stairs.
So they tend to stay down. They're not here at the moment, but
well, we look forward to that. But today I thought we haven't really had a proper sit-down podcast chat. We've had a couple other projects on the go. Spoiler alert. So I thought that today, now that we're kicking back off again, and as you know, I troll through your Instas on the Fit Affiliate account and see something interesting. And you did a post about a week and a half ago about understanding the difference between trainer, coach, and mentor. Now, mentor is a whole new level that we haven't really discussed what the definition of that is on this podcast. We talk a lot about the difference between trainer and coach. We know that that's the hill you've kind of put your flag on, and that's where you're prepared to die, so that more of us understand the difference between the two. But then mentor, and you asked on the post, for people to give their definition. You got quite a few varying definitions on that. So I thought this would be worth digging into today to provide some discussion and clarity around it.
It's obviously a topic. It's a topic that I guess we could politely say I care a lot about. It's one of those things where when you put your entire life into becoming something, right? It's important that your idea, your ideological reality is intact. And it's interesting because as somebody who enjoys photography, I would never consider myself a photographer, despite the fact that probably by many people's standards, I have a professional skill set in there, but I would never really ever consider myself a photographer. And maybe it's because I don't sell my prints and I don't want to sell my prints. But for me, the reason that I'm not interested in being a photographer is that I don't consider myself one. And I think in an attempt to try to consider myself one is a disrespect to the people who are in fact one, in my opinion. Right? I appreciate everybody's support and appreciation of, my artwork. But for me, it's creation and meditation. And the reason I bring that whole conversation up is that I think you see this a lot with coaching, where, for me at least, one of the things that I struggle with so much is not that I want anybody to be limited to their pursuit of coaching. I think that everybody should go after this career, especially if you enjoy this career, and throw yourself at it. But I think it's important that we as an industry, right, as an economy, really, start to really define the difference between them, because it's just a massive disservice to the trainers to consider themselves coaches, and for coaches to be trainers and mentors. And the ambiguity that exists in the industry just is not only not doing them any good, but it's also not doing the customers, the clients, or anybody that's, a part of it any good. And that's, for me, why it's one of those things, because it's a lot of work to be good at anything. And so, it's identifiably important to be like, photographer is a photographer. I don't care how we determine what makes them a photographer, but, for me, I'm not going to be a photographer until, at least a photographer probably tells me I am one.
And it is interesting that the terms are thrown around so interchangeably. And, I'll say from the outset, and we've said this 1,000 times, there's nothing wrong with being a trainer, because we need more of those. They're our, foot soldiers on the ground to help people move better. That's fine. But the terms are thrown around so interchangeably, it does get very hard when people are seeking a higher level of help for a particular problem or something that they've got going on, that the waters become very muddied about. And that's where we get in with the adding in the guru space, as in selling you a quick fix solution to a problem, but masking it as coaching or mentoring or guidance or whatever it is happens to be. But it's just a generic templated solution that solves for nothing specifically for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know as though they half the time offer a quick fix so much as just
No.
a certain fix.
Mm.
That's probably the big problem with the
Well,
guru space, and we can definitely dig into the nuance and the delineation of the two of them. But I think it's an important I think it's an important discussion and journey, and it's part and parcel in alignment with the work that is done with the $1 Million Coach program. That whole program exists to obviously make $1 million coaches, but the way that we will do that is by delineating and demarcating where you're at in your journey and really where your earning potential is in relation to that journey. And so you know kind of where to get to next. But like until we decide and define and dictate what makes a professional coach, a
mm,
mentor, or a trainer, we can't objectively define or improve them.
mm.
Right.
Well, we spoke actually yesterday on the MDCP podcast about the concept of a professional coach doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be working, 40 hours a week, coaching all the classes a day, or, you know, doing that. You can be a professional coach by your attitude and your application to behavioral change and looking at your own ongoing learning, not just accumulating certificates.
Hmm.
So we dug into that a bit yesterday by coincidence in regarding, you know, what is a professional coach? Because, like you just said in the earlier example, you wouldn't consider yourself a photographer, you know, and a lot of coaches who are very talented and are very good and are actual coaches, but they have a full time job and they might, you know, coach, one or two times a week. And they're like, oh, but I don't think I'm a professional because it's not my full time thing.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we actually dug into that yesterday a little bit.
Well, I think that's an important conversation, and you should definitely go there and listen to the professional coach one.
Mhm.
But as it applies to the process, and I guess the first thing that I should say is that how you are a coach, what you do as a coach, doesn't matter, in my opinion. Whether you work 100 hours a week or you work 1 hour a week,
Mm,
I don't think delineates or denotes somebody that is or is not a coach. I think the why and the nature of what you're doing matters for sure, but not like the nuances and the technical application,
mm,
right? And I think an ease of explanation of this whole thing, it's probably best to just start with like the practical difference, right?
mm,
In the coaching world, in the leadership world, this was another post as well, is because there's really two types of affiliates as well, but there's really two types of leaders or two types of people on the floor as well, and that is transactional instructors or leaders, and then there's transformational.
mm,
And by and large, that right there is the key distinction between a instructor slash trainer and a coach. Right? Coaches are transformational
mm,
by every single conceivable sense of the word, and instructors and trainers are transactional. And again, to your point, there's nothing wrong with being a trainer. In fact, it's essentially kind of like, that apprentice journeyman relationship where you have to kind of move through them because it makes a little bit of sense. Because a lot of the work that you'll do to get to the point where you get to become a coach is acquiring and amassing information. And so much of training and instruction is about your ability to articulate and disseminate that information. So it's a very vital step. But
mm,
that in itself suggests that somehow trainers or instructors are below coaches. I wouldn't even say that. I would just say that
mm,
they're just different. Right? I mean, because like,
mm,
if you want to look at like success as a metric of money, there's a lot of trainers and instructors that are way out earning coaches
mm,
because training and instructing in many ways is much easier to scale than coaching is.
mm,
Right. And that I think is important. So like if you're just here for the money,
mm.
feel free to just stop right at training and just stop calling yourself a coach, just stop distracting everybody by it, and then everybody would feel a lot happier.
And it's, you know, to your point on that, it is very easy because people generally want to take the quick, just give me the answer. So the trainer is like, oh, you've got a tight hip flexor. I've got you. You want to improve your deadlift. I've got a fix for that. I can give you the answer. Whereas when we then move into the space of coaching, so to use those examples, I guess, you need to have been a trainer to understand the basic mechanics, so that when you get into coaching, it's like, why is keeping your hip flexors loose and limber an issue for you? Why is doing mobility an issue for you? Why is doing that? And get into the behavioral aspects. But you need to understand the doing or the structural aspects first, I guess. But
Mhm.
it's the general population wants to abdicate responsibility and go, well, I saw, Tony, but he said he'd make my deadlift better, but he didn't. Nothing at all to do with anything that you may or may not have done. And people want the answers, which is why when affiliate owners get their inbox bombarded by the gurus going, hey, we're going to give you 50 new leads, which in their brain goes 50 new members. And that's a whole other conversation. But it's like, oh, it's someone's giving me the solution. So that's where that trainer is valuable, because people attach to that initially.
Well, it's the bulk of what everybody is, right? I mean,
Mm,
the vast majority. I mean, even in CrossFit's, you know,
mm,
sense, like they don't call anybody. You're all trainers until you're L4, right? I mean, really, kind
mm,
of you're L3, but you're L4 is when you're officially knighted, so to speak, and
mm,
you've been deemed a coach in CrossFit sense. And I think it's important to note that, like, we probably shouldn't so freely throw around the word coach. Marketing says otherwise, right? Like,
mm,
the thing is about trainers and teachers is that we all have some degree of trauma around them, right? Like
mm,
we all hated school, and a teacher made us feel some type of way, and like a lot of people don't really want to buy another college education or another, you know, access to another teacher, and so coach just seems way more valuable, and it is
mm,
truly.
mm,
But the thing about being a coach is that the level of service that you have to provide as a coach, the level of availability, vulnerability, and compassion, etc., is far beyond what most trainers are truly willing to do.
mm,
And the sooner they just realize that, like, oh, I'm not a coach, they would just be so free of so much pressure and so
mm,
much stress and so much confusion that their life would be so much simpler. They could become the world's best CrossFit trainers and instructors. And they would be
mm,
so much better at that if they just realized that, like, oh, I'm a trainer. I'm an
mm,
instructor. And I really like the shit out of being a trainer and instructor. I
mm,
don't really like doing coach things. Like, it's not a natural succession. Like, absolutely, you
mm,
will likely move from trainer to coach if you want to, but
mm,
you need to want to, because it's a very different service level. It's a very different interaction. It's a very different outcome. But
mm,
it's mostly a different level of service that most trainers struggle to fulfill on. And right in that post about transactional affiliates and transformational affiliates, it's the same thing. Transactional coaches or transactional trainers are people who are just task oriented. They're task obsessed. And most CrossFitters, the vast majority of CrossFitters are task obsessed. What's my score? Right?
mm,
What's my benchmark? Did I PR? Right? We are task obsessed humans. We're not exactly, as a whole, as a community, transformation obsessed humans, meaning process driven, success driven, future driven.
mm,
Just all you got to do is just look at the open every single year and watch how bad everybody melts down over gymnastics to realize that, like, oh, they're task obsessed. They're not
mm,
transformation obsessed, because gymnastics is essentially the purest sense of transformation. Because the only way to get better at gymnastics, truly, and this is the reason why I think I threw so much of my life at it, is that gymnastics is really just pure human behavior, right? It's just
mm,
physical movement perfected. And then it's a question of how well can Lisa perform to that standard, right? Which is really just a demonstration of physical behavior. And
mm,
the only way to improve somebody in gymnastics, calisthenics, whatever you want to call it, is through coaching. You can't task drive somebody forward. Like, you
mm,
could probably give them, some volume density programs with pull-ups. So you can do, 5x5 pull-ups and stuff like that. And you can give them arbitrary standards, but in order to actually improve somebody in the element or the sport of gymnastics, you have to expose them. Right? I have to put
mm,
you on top of the rings and let you experience you can't hold your body weight up there, or you can't
mm,
control the apparatus, and you don't have control of the top, you don't have control of the bottom. And then it's my job to expose you to that awareness, and then together help you come up with a solution to that problem. How are we going to hold this time? How are we going to learn to develop this time up here, this time down here, and then move from
mm,
top to bottom? Right? You can't really. This is one of the reasons that so many affiliates struggle with the element of gymnastics, is that they want to assign tasks to it. You can
Mm,
task piss out of weightlifting and endurance, right? Like
mm,
you can just hit percentages and hit intervals over and over and over again. And you can do that to a certain degree with gymnastics, but not a pure degree. And it is the key, like true, just, like
mm,
baseline of what makes you a great CrossFitter. And it's, if you look at what we know to be the sickness, fitness, wellness continuum, in order to move somebody truly to fitness, right? Like, most physical activity can get us to well, right? Like there's
mm,
a lot of people in a lot of gyms doing a lot of organic adaptation, getting
mm,
themselves to well. They're not fit by any definition that we agree to. They're
mm,
not observably, identifiably, or improvably fit by any of our metrics, but they are well. They're out.
mm,
They're off the couch. They are probably losing body fat. They are likely, moving with some degree of control and consistency.
mm,
But that last part, to make it the other half of that arc, it's all neurological, right? That's the stuff that
mm,
people don't really ever think about. It's, coordination, agility, accuracy, etc. Right? And those things are all the singular most important things in gymnastics, right? And
mm,
so my point in this whole sort of diatribe in terms of the physical part of it is that coaching becomes kind of that last piece of the puzzle in terms of true fitness. And that's how I think it drags a lot of trainers accidentally to it, where
mm.
we know that it's such a vital part of CrossFit. We know it's such a vital part of every CrossFitter's journey. We think that in some way we're not a good trainer if we don't at least try to become a coach. That's not the case,
Mm,
really.
mm. You can be, and as we've talked before, with the goals that CrossFit have, for the number of people involved in CrossFit, we do need more trainers. We definitely need more coaches, but, you know, they're our front line. They're the foot soldiers. It's an important role to fill. We don't want to diminish that at all. It's interesting that you talk about, as humans with task focus. And I think that's where, when we slip back into the definition, we talk about coaching versus the gurus, and that's where they can uh, find it easy to tap into people's base need as, task obsessed is like, we're going to give you more things to do. So
Mhm.
the affiliate owners suddenly fill their calendar with all of these tasks to do every day, and they feel like I'm hustling, I'm grinding, I'm doing it, and my coach told me to do these things and I'll be successful.
Mhm.
And that's where it's really easy for that, to slip in on that. And before they know it, you know, affiliate owners are, task abating all over the place. They are, you know, busier, they feel, than they've ever been, but actually making less progress on their actual things that are causing them to trip up in the same places every single time, which comes back to their behaviors, which is where when a coach will step in and go, well, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Is that a problem? Or are you making it one?
Um, the coaching is a gift, truly. I think it's something that it's hard because, again, I do climb up on top of a very tall soapbox and I scream it from the rooftops and I yell about it. And I do it only not because I think that I'm better than anybody or that I think that, I'm the world's best coach, because I wouldn't even actually consider myself, a great coach in any one of those senses. It's that for so many people, it would just solve a lot of stress and struggle if they just knew where they were at in their journey. And they were also okay with where their destination is. And I think, this is today's post. We're talking
Yes.
about post, right? Which is just like being able to define your future. We
Mm,
tend to, especially in CrossFit, because we are so task obsessed, we are so mimetically focused. We don't really know where we're going anymore, especially once you get out of pain. Like once you have gotten out of hell, so to speak, and we already know one thing, and that people are way more motivated to basically get out of hell than they are to get into heaven.
mm,
And the reason for that is simple. Right? Like, experiencing hell is very objective. It's
mm,
painful. It's physical. It sucks, right? But like the idea and the notion, the ideological reality of heaven seems very distant, abstract, esoteric, whatever you want to call it.
mm,
And so the idea of what that looks like is like, I don't know, but anything's better than here. So let's just get out of here.
mm,
And as it applies to that conversation in training, teaching, coaching, and mentoring, that's so much of it, right? We end up getting out of pain, we end up getting into an industry, and then we don't really know what we're doing or what we want to do with this thing, this career, this professional notion, this thing. And so
mm,
we just look around, we're like, I'm gonna do that thing. And then you might have started accidentally emulating a coach when
mm,
you're just only an instructor, but that coach doesn't even realize that they're a coach because nobody even really bothered to tell them. They're like, hey, this is what makes you a coach, this is what makes you a trainer. And that's why, things like this are so important. And there's some other platforms that do a really good job of this as well. I think CrossFit as a whole, level 1, 2, 3, and 4 does. People just don't listen to it. Bird Box
mm,
does a really good job of delineating transactional versus transformational and
mm.
help people understand like where you're at in the journey. Because to get to anywhere, you have to know where you're starting from.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that's really overlooked. But, keeping with that sort of the conversation, the question is really like, why do I care about it so much? And it's really very simple. Like, it's my life mission is very simple. And that is to just teach people the beauty and the capability of human behavior. That's
Mm,
it. In order to do that, I have to first help them become aware of what a coach does, because they're the only real people who actually affect behavior. And
mm.
like this, where I think a lot of like psychologists and therapists be like, wait a minute, what we do here. And that's one part of it. But there's a
Mm,
whole different part of that. We're not going to get into that. But in terms of this conversation, yes, they
mm,
are. They do play a role in terms of spurring awareness. It's just the action part that is unique to the coaching part. The training agrees with me.
yeah, it did. It backed up that point. Well,
Um, Go ahead.
I, no, I was going to say it is very the point you just made in there, which I was like, oh, you touch on to that it was a good point. And now it's gone because the train disturbed me.
Me
It's
too.
talking about that knowing that end state. So we just want to get out of hell, and then once we're out of that, we don't know what it's okay to be. I mean, I'll put myself on the mat and say, once I got out of, owning the affiliate and getting past some of that trauma and stuff and those habits and beliefs, and then it's like, well, I need to find something else to do. And I started to, as we may as well publish my coaching calls numerous times, as like, oh, there's Lisa being busy again, creating things because she feels like she has to, because I hadn't defined what an end state looks like, as in, what do you want the ideal to be?
Mm.
And it took a coach, which is you, and I will argue that you are indeed a very, very great coach, particularly for me. But
You have to. You technically pay me, so I would hope that you.
well, there is that. There is that. But as in asking, well, what do you want it to look like? What do you want it can be anything, and making it okay to hold space to that conversation and going, why do you feel the need that you have to be doing all of these things? Why is it not okay to be pursuing something just because you love it?
Mm.
And we get scared about that as affiliate owners because we're told do more things, be more things, and everything will be fine.
Well, man, you got me. I guess there's a whole spider web of places I want to take this whole last podcast to, but I'm trying to keep us in the time frame here. And I'm like, if I go that way, I'm definitely going to run out of time. This obviously is a trigger for me. It's a hot button. And it's not because it frustrates me. It's one of those things where I just truly believe in my soul that so much good can be done if we can just help people understand where they're at. There's so much suffering that people endure in this professional journey because they live in the gap, but they really need to remember that they're in the game. But in order to do that, they have to understand that where they're at in the journey. Instead, they just look around and they're like, I want to be like that guy or that guy. And like, as somebody who was a seminar instructor for a decade, I would like to think that I was very different than most seminar instructors. And this is nothing wrong with the other seminar instructors. It's just that it was never about me. And I think this is a central sort of part of what it means to be a coach is that training and instructing can tend to get a little bit more on the self-aggrandizing sort of aspect. I don't want to call it like the egotistical side because that just has a negative connotation, but like it's very easy to get a lot of recognition in the training and instruction because the task nature of it is that like, hey, do this and it will produce a result. And then when it does produce that result, you're like, say thank you. Go ahead. Right. And coaching, the very nature of coaching is much more selfless because it's getting you to understand that you are capable and you are the answer, not me. This has nothing to do with me. Right? I'm just here because I believe in you. And I believe in you because you're a human. And I
Mm.
believe that all humans are uniquely capable in the exact same fashion. It just takes somebody to pull that belief out of them.
Mm.
And that's really all it's ever been. And so at the front of every room I stood in front of, people are always, was like, how do you have the courage to do that? And I'm like, because it was never about me. I
Mm.
never stood at the front of any room with any amount of anything that was written on my shirt and believed it had anything to do with me. It was always about the people in the room. And so my sense of self was really never in question. Right?
Mm.
All I had to do was make sure that they got everything they needed this weekend. And that's all I cared about. Right? And I threw myself at that thing. And I think that's an important part of the conversation, not because like I'm great for those reasons. It's just that I'm driven, like many coaches are, for the development of other people. Many
Mm.
trainers and instructors are driven to deliver information. And that's
Mm.
okay. Like, I think it's important that we all know the difference. And then there's a third actor out there, which is the mentor.
Mm.
And this one, I think, even increasingly now gets thrown around even more. And not in a bad way, just in another confusing way. It's like coach with an extra layer of like sprinkles on top. It gets even more confusing because then there's a more nefarious actor that hops in there, which is the guru, and that changes and throws everything all over the place, right? And so the mentor. So I guess just for clarity's sake, trainers are teachers. It's their job. They are task oriented. It's their job to instruct. It is their job to deliver curriculum with the intended result of producing X, Y, or Z. That's it.
Mm.
Coaches are transformational. They deal in behaviors, they deal in beliefs, they deal in limitations, they deal in, root causes and symptoms, but they are essentially trying to deliver you to a place of agreed upon mutual benefit, right?
Mm.
Mentors are just about guidance, just advice, right?
Mm.
A mentor is somebody who has experienced it, done it, and they are willing to share with you what worked for them and what was a part of their journey. And they're a great resource. The problem with them is that they are only advice driven. They only have their singular experience, and their only real value is delivering that
Mm.
singular experience. But mentoring is so important for so many people. Like so many successful people have been mentored by many, many great people,
Mm.
myself included. And if I wasn't for my mentors, I probably would be a fraction of the person that I am. And because of that, people talk about it. And we talk about
Mm.
our mentors. We talk about being mentored. And that gives way to marketing, which
Mm.
allows an entire class of people to step in and sell mentorship. And I
Mm.
will tell you that one thing that will always be my definition of a mentor, they're free.
Mm.
I mean,
Yep.
by free, I don't mean that like you're not going to provide an immense amount of value, because for my mentors, I worked my ass off for them. I
Mm.
contributed and delivered and brought so much value to them to the best of my ability that I could. I just
Mm.
didn't pay them. They
Mm.
probably benefited financially, substantially from my relationship with them, but I benefited way more from just the experience of that. And mentorship, by that definition, is finite. And this
Mm.
is the problem with mentorship: is some people love to sell mentorship, but that's a bit disingenuous in and of itself. Um,
Mm.
and the very nature of how mentorship works is essentially that it's pretty finite in your ability to deliver it, which then gives
Mm.
way to this whole other class of people who's like, well, I could sell my knowledge, I could sell my information and my story and my experience, and you could buy it from me. And if you do a really good job, you could replicate it. And
Mm.
that's really where the guru thing was born from. And
Yep.
it's not necessarily even meant to be a negative connotation to the gurus out there, because I think that there's still value in a lot of the information that some of those gurus sell. And it might be
Mm.
exactly what you need where you're at in your journey. But I can tell you that there's some guarantees that you're going to need. One, you're always going to need a coach. Every human does. There's no way around it. I think instructors are an absolutely vital part of the relationship, and you're going to need many instructors for many different phases of your life throughout the journey.
Mm.
Your life will be fantastically improved when you have a mentor, an actual one, not one that's paid, not one that's actually a trainer or an instructor, or even a coach operating or moonlighting as a mentor because it sounds fancier. And you might even find some value in a guru. Just vet them very carefully, because the big problem with gurus and mentors, if we're being very clear, is they're very singular in focus. If it's my
Mm.
job to tell you my story and what worked for me, it's going to be your job to try to replicate that exact same scenario in a completely different market on the other side of the planet.
Mm.
That's going to be questionable. And I can't guarantee any amount of that success. And that's where the gurus get the negative connotation. Because when you don't replicate that success, then it's just like, that's your fault.
Mm. And you're right, because it makes it very, when you're talking about guru or, a mentor saying, well, here's the path, it may or may not be able to be directly applied to your particular situation, your unique situation. Because, we're all got our own individual journeys, but you can't necessarily take what they tell you and just transplant it straight into your situation and get your solution. It's going to take some manipulating and massaging. So then it's not really that same solution, which abdicates responsibility for the guru, because it's like, well, you changed what I gave you to do. And then for the guru, the person, I've created a new word, who has taken on that advice, is they're looking to abdicate responsibility. Well, hey, Tony, I bought your program and it didn't work for me. And you're saying, well, you changed it. And I'm saying, well, it didn't fit. So rather than looking at what are the base behaviors, which is where the coaching is important, we keep talking about it, as to, well, why do you keep doing those things and repeating those patterns? Because I've been watching you now for a while and you keep repeating patterns and behavior. And that's what a coach is there to uniquely see and then have that conversation, rather than, well, I've got your money now and I gave you the solution you wanted, so laters.
If everybody knew what an instructor or trainer was, if everybody knew what a coach was and what the difference is, and if everybody knew what a mentor was and a guru was, everybody would be in much better shape. Because anybody who knows the difference in those four characters, it's really the three, but let's call it the four. The guru's now got a seat at the table, unfortunately. We'll leave out the other actors, but con artists and whatnot. But away. Anybody who knows what a coach is and an instructor is would not buy a guru's program and then be upset that the guru didn't want to change the program for their needs, right? Like, and this is what you see so much. There's so many people who get so upset because they buy this program from this guru, this mentor who's really just a guru, who is offering to solve all these problems. And they really buy into this idea that's going to solve all these problems. And then they buy it and they're processing through their, experience what they hope this is going to be like. And end up getting this program. And they're like, hey, listen, this is all amazing, but like this little part doesn't work, or this part, and like Guru's just going to be like, you didn't pay me to do that. You paid me to tell you what to do. Now it's your job to figure out how to do it, right? And there's a lot of value that comes in that, honestly, if you know what to do. But there's a lot of frustration and a lot of abdication that comes out of being like, that person was the villain. They took advantage of me. They sold me this thing. But, I wouldn't even necessarily fault the guru, because the reason that they exist is there's a million people out here looking, for Eden. They're out here looking for the fountain of youth, and they want to be sold anything that looks like it. Right? And so listen, when there's a market, there's going to be somebody there to sell you something.
Yeah, every single time. And, the gurus have figured out that the coaching term can be more lucrative and valuable. So they sell what they're doing as, yeah, come on, I'll coach you through my program. Is it though? And, that's where, people who are desperate and, affiliate owners are stuck. The dumpster's on fire. Like, everything sucks. Everything hurts. It's like, okay, you're the beacon in the dark. That's you've got a fire hose. The fire hose might be just pointed in one specific area. Doesn't matter about the rest of the building that's going to keep burning. But it just seems like here's an answer that I need right now.
And maybe that's the right answer. I think, this is a hard conversation, I think, of episode in general, because a lot of people have probably hired and maybe even like the people that they work with. And I don't really think that there's anything wrong with anything that works. What I have a problem with is when things don't work. And either A, the person who it didn't work for is upset because they feel like they were entitled to something different than they actually bought, then I'm going to ask you, Lisa, why are you upset with that? Like, you bought that and
Mm.
you should have known better. Or B, the other side of it is that if the person who sold it, and this is usually the case, offers to do a whole bunch of things that they are not even remotely capable of doing,
Mm.
particularly of note, speaking to the direct needs and implications of an individual market.
Mm.
And this is where I get so mad at so many of the gurus, the self-proclaimed mentors, is because I will never tell anybody that I am an affiliate mentor, although I get titled it all the time. It's what
Mm.
everybody loves to call me. They're like, "Oh, you mentor?" I was like, "Nope, I don't mentor them," because
Mm.
I don't have any interest in coming in and being like, "Here's what I did." Right? I don't. It's never even been about that. It's always been about, we decided to build an affiliate coaching program, and
Mm.
it became very clear in a very short period of time that, whoa, people have no idea what coaching actually is, especially when you take the notion of coaching off of the training floor
Mm.
and think about how you apply coaching to the real world. And then they're like, so
Mm.
isn't that like mentoring? No, it's not.
Mm.
Mentoring is very
Mm.
different than coaching, right? It
Mm.
particularly through one specific lens, and that's compassion. Like, mentors are not compassionate. If You have to understand what compassion means, but coaches are compassionate, and great ones are surgically compassionate, and they will
Mm.
work until the job is done. And that really
Mm.
means until we have spurred the awareness and you have taken the action and you have provided the resolution. A mentor can't be compassionate because they're just going to tell you what to do.
Mm.
They can't be responsible for how you do it.
Mm.
Right? And a coach gets himself in that situation. And this is where that separation between the three of them exists on both sides. Trainers and instructors are not compassionate either.
Mm.
They can't be.
Mm.
They are bound
Black and
to,
white.
driven by tasks and curriculum. It's their
Mm.
job to deliver that curriculum to the best of their ability with the intention of that result. And if they're lucky, compassion will ensue and a result will come from it. But that's not even
Mm.
what they're paid to do. Coaches operate in compassion, and compassion operates in behavior. That's
Mm.
it. In mentorship, really just operates in advice. It's just like,
Mm.
here's my journey.
Yep.
Gurus step in and break the whole thing. And then they
Yep.
offer mentorship, aka advice, templates, solutions, systems. Here's my playbook for how to run your affiliate. And then I'm going to coach you, but I'm going to do no coaching. But I'm going to coach you and tell you that I'm coaching because that's a nice value stack. And I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it. That's another value stack. And they just stack all these things in, and they don't do any of them. And if they do them,
Mm.
they do them by their own definition. They're able to get away with it because nobody standardized what it
Mm.
means to be a trainer. Nobody standardized what it means to be a coach or a mentor.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
you have all these mentorship programs and stuff that are out there. And really what they end up being is loosely assembled coaching programs with the intention of coaching people, but they do so poorly because rather than coaching, meaning stepping in and seeing what the struggle is and asking you and delivering you from that struggle, they end up teaching the
Mm.
curriculum that they come along with, right, in their mentor toolbox. And now all of a sudden we got ourselves a problem, right? Now we've
Mm.
got people operating poorly as both sides of it. And that's really one of the things that's so frustrating for us as a business, is that we operate in an industry that is very, very confused. The market's very confused as to like, but no, I have a coach. I'm like,
Mm. No.
you have a trainer, an instructor, maybe a guru, but you
Mm.
don't have a coach. I can tell you
Mm.
because, and this will always upset all the other ones in the industry, we're the only coaches. And the reason we're the
Mm.
only coaches, it's hard. It's incredibly hard to do, and it's incredibly hard to scale. And it's the reason I can stand here with certainty and safety when I say it, because
Mm.
they're not going to do it.
Mm. Well, it just makes it, you know, when you're working to a curriculum and a template, and then you've got someone in front of you who has sought your advice and wants a solution, and you're giving them all of these steps and all these things, and they're not doing it. So the answer is, well, the problem must be you. You're not keeping up. Why are you not keeping up? Like, do more. Whereas in a coaching relationship, what we, have experienced and what I've experienced is, okay, you're not getting these things done what's stopping you getting them done. Let's talk about that. Not, well, you just need to do more and you need to work faster and harder and work smarter. It's, what is the underlying behavior that's tripping that up?
Mhm.
And then we can get into a whole, you know, rabbit hole of, well, I'm really scared of XYZ outcome. Right. Now we've got something to work with. And that's the nature of that coaching relationship that evolves and grows, rather than looking at just the things, are the boxes ticked. And that's, I think, the power I've, before I came to Fit Affiliate as a client, I had what I would have called business coaches at the time. But when I experienced an actual coaching relationship, I used to remember my coaching calls were on a Friday morning, my time. I'd go to the box to coach Friday and I was fire, because I'd had like my eyes open to things. I'd seen things. I'd thought differently about things, rather than have someone send me an email and go, well, have you thought about putting flyers underneath windscreen wipers at the shopping centre and standing up the street with a sandwich board? And I'm like, the fuck am I paying you $5,000 a month for this? Like, what the hell? Like, it was just, it's very different once you've been coached well to understand that that guru or mentor is really limited by the scope of their experience, and anything outside that outside the lines they can't deal with. Whereas because coaching is so open ended and it's about you, there's a lot more questions and it's behavioral. There's no cap to where it can take you.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of it and the power.
I think if maybe this is unique to America because our healthcare system is so broken, but I suspect it's the case everywhere. But like, if you end up in the hospital and you have unfortunately multiple things wrong with you, right? You're likely going to see an endocrinologist. You're likely going to see a heart doctor, brain surgeon, whatever the thing is going on, right? But there's different specialists for different problems. And in this example, this analog, those people would be fantastic either gurus, mentors, or even instructors. Right? Like the person who operates in the middle is essentially the long but not necessarily forgotten physician, right? Whose job is to understand Lisa's root problems, Lisa's root behaviors, and to get her access to the right people. And one of the things that like I've always said about myself is that people are like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I collect people." Right? I'm a connector. Right? I collect and connect. And the reason I do that is because I know where my abilities and responsibility ends. And I know where another person or resource would be very beneficial in someone's journey. And, you can think about it kind of in that same sort of scenario where you don't go, if you went to the hospital and, you had the same doctor for every single, they were the same person doing spine surgery as they were, checking like your endocrine levels. And like, you'd be like, can I get a second opinion? Right. But we just don't really treat it that way when we buy things. And what ends up happening, I think most of the time when people hire help is that they don't really, it's not so much they don't want help, but they want to get rid of the responsibility. Right. And most people hire trainers, instructors, coaches, mentors, gurus, not necessarily because they're really truly actually interested in the outcome. They're really interested in abdicating the responsibility, because when you end up as an entrepreneur and you don't know what the fuck to do next, it is the heaviest, most miserable experience ever. And hiring a guru would allow you to just point the finger and be like, their fault, because I tried what you said. Now it's your fault, not mine, that didn't work. And that's an insidious sort of part of it. And there's a whole big chunk of that I think we could dig into on another podcast episode. But until you've experienced a true coach, and I've been fortunate enough that I've had many great coaches in my life, and each one of them has changed my opinion of lots of things, particularly behaviors of myself and of other people. And it's until you experience that, do you realize that, like, oh, there's a big difference. Right? And again, it's not that there's anything wrong with trainers and instructors, because they move mountains. They are the force multiplier in CrossFit, because they are so much more ubiquitous. There's so many more of them, and there can be so many more of them, and they can do so much more work at scale. It's just that it's that last piece when you have that sort of last part of the journey, that last 20%, so to speak, you're probably going to find yourself in need of a coach. And so many people end up going after coaches, and what they end up getting is another better instructor.
Mm.
And it's no offense to that person either.
No, but it just layers on the feeling that I'm just doing the same things over and over, and I feel like I'm progressing a little bit, but I'm not progressing much. And I feel like it's the same thing, but just a different way after a while.
Plug in the computer back to the desk. No, and I think I could spend forever talking about it. The best thing to do, in a perfect sort of scenario, is imagine an affiliate that you were in possession of, that you owned, and you had training or instruction. Call it the affiliate playbook. Everything you ever need to learn about the best practices, and it's free. It's in your affiliate toolkit. Just go download it. You're probably going to not know what to do with it. And then imagine you had a coach, somebody who has no bias, no curriculum, no angle, who's just going to say, why is that a struggle for you, Lisa, as it applies to you working through the curriculum of that, right? Imagine then you also had access to a mentor, a friend, somebody who's in the community who owns a very successful affiliate and who is willing to share secrets with you that you provide an immense amount of value to. And I think that's the important part of the mentorship that is not talked about. The mentor or mentee relationship is that the mentee delivers an insane amount of value to mentors. And you don't do that through dollars. Do that through basically apprentice type things, and that mentor helps them learn those experiences that they learned along the way, and it can help them save a bunch of time. And truly, and then there's the last step. And imagine that you have all three of those people, and then you could just hire the guru expert. You could hire the person to do, this thing or that thing or this thing, and they would be absolutely fine, because you wouldn't need to change their curriculum for you. You would be able to take bits and the pieces out of that model that you bought from them and put it into practice in your place. And that's the perfect solution. Right? We live in the middle of that. We don't pretend to do any other side of it. But we have a big problem with people who like to overstep their boundaries and try to do all the things and then end up doing nothing really well. Why don't we all just stay in our own lane and do the one thing that we do incredibly well and reasonably well? It just happens to be that we sit in the coaching lane, which is the most financially attractive of all of them, and marketing makes it much easier.
And that's the tricky thing. We're kind of, we often talk that we're in a field of one, but it's also a very crowded space because of everyone else that's calling themselves a coach. And you're right. It's not until you've truly experienced that coaching relationship, and with a good coach or a great coach, you can experience that in your first interaction. So I remember when I jumped on my first call with you guys, it's discovery call consult. You guys coached the shit out of me in that hour, and I wasn't even a client yet. And it was, so tell us, where you're at and what you're struggling with, and and asking some of those questions. At one point, we're all in tears, I'm sure of it. But it's, in that one call, I was like, these are my people. Like I need to, rather than just, well, here's what we offer, here's the plan, it's going to cost you X amount, and here's what you'll work through, and here are the modules. Like that was not the experience. It wasn't a sales call. There's no selling. And I remember one of the first things that you guys said to me is that if we can't help you, we're going to tell you. If we can't take you because it's not a good fit or whatever, but we're going to not just throw you back out into the ocean. We're going to give you something that you can move forward with on your own if you need to. Just something that you can take away. We're not just going to throw you to the wind. You go, well, look, you know what? It's not a good fit for us. Thanks for calling. Bye. Like out of that first 1 hour call, I had so much that I could have just toddled off on my own and made some improvements for sure. Yeah.
Coming in contact with a coach is like seeing somebody really, really attractive. Not that coaches are attractive. Not saying that. It's just one of the things where you're just like, you find yourself the rest of the day being like, wow, you just can't get that person out of your head, right? And it's one of those things because it's a very transformative experience, right? It's very different than a transactional nature and a transformative nature. And that's why we are the way that we are. We're designed the way that we are, both as coaches and also as a business. That's just
Yeah.
because, it's very clear as soon as you spend time with us that like things are very, very differently. But, I think a good example of this is swimming, right? Think about it as a pool. Like we are absolutely FitBilly is an industry of one. We are the only true coaches in this space, and we do operate in a very, very crowded pool. But
Mm.
we do that by choice because we are incredibly fast swimmers in the open ocean, but nobody really sees us swimming out there because
Mm.
it's vast, it's large, and people are doing amazing, amazing things out there. So we like to jump in the swimming pool so that everybody realizes, like, whoa, how are they so much faster than everybody else in here? So we have to throw ourselves in there just simply to
Mm.
spur awareness that, like, hey, my coach is different than you. Well, that's because they're not a
Mm.
coach. And
Mm.
they just don't realize that. They're not lying to you. They're not doing it maliciously. They're not malevolent or nefarious. Like they just don't realize that they're not coaches.
Mm.
That they were
And I
hired to
think
be a coach and told to be a coach. Now they're doing coach things that they think it's just instruction.
a coach should do. And I think that's where it can get confusing, because when we say to people, listen, if you want to chat about where you're at, book a call, because there's so many of the gurus and the out there, that's a sales call. People are reluctant to click on a link because they're like, oh, you're just going to try and sell me into your program, and I've been through 8 of these and da da da. Not understanding that if you're actually connecting with a coach, they're not selling you anything. They're asking you, what do you want? What do you need? I don't have, like, I think you've said it a million times. We don't have anything to sell you.
Hmm.
We
Which is
want to
always
know.
the story where something to sell you tells you. So unfortunately, that's not a great example because they all
I,
think the same thing, but they always have something to sell you. But
yeah,
one thing that we really have to sell you is coaching.
time.
Right? Like it's
Mm,
your future, and like I said it before, but it is my life's mission to teach people the beauty and the capability and utility of behavior, right? And like I'll do that every single day of my life in every
yeah.
single interaction, and you can't turn that off. And it's not that I coached the crap out of you on that call because I wanted to sell you or persuade you.
Mm,
It's just that I have no interest in any conversation that I can't help people become aware of behavior.
mm.
And it's just not, it's not, and if you know me and you know me really well and you spend time with me outside of coaching calls, you'll see me just completely clam up in many situations because
Mm.
I've tried to help people become aware of behavior and they don't want to be. So I just stay quiet.
And it's really funny. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and what was it last week? I can't remember. Days fly. And I was talking about, when I went to the semi-final on the weekend, that, well, I felt a little bit funny at first because I don't own an affiliate and I'm, not coaching. And I said, I'm not coaching, and they're like, whoa, I beg to differ. You're helping coaches be better and help more people. I went, true. I'm not training on the floor and helping people with the air squat. And it was a real big definition, even in the way that I can slip back into the language going, yeah, well, I'm not coaching anymore. It's like, well, you are. And it's on a bigger scale now. It's more behavioral based and, helping people make more of that transformational change rather than that transactional change. So that
Mhm.
was even, a shift for me when somebody outside pointed that out and you're like, oh yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So
I think one thing that, will be my swan song to this entire industry one day when I do eventually step away, because I will eventually probably step away from it, is that I hope to, in my time, having spent my time here and my focus here, help people realize that what they have in their possession and the skills that they are crafting, curating, and honing on that floor as trainers as well as coaches is worth so much money in spaces much larger than their affiliate. Like there will be in the
mm,
not so distant future, I suspect you will see a lot of amazing high level coaches in the CrossFit space move into corporate leadership type roles. Not so much the leadership role itself, but corporate leadership coaching, where
mm,
companies, well, and they're already doing this, right? Companies will be hiring up these people because coaching is coaching is coaching.
mm,
What you're coaching doesn't matter because, again, coaching is not about curriculum, it's about
mm,
behaviors and belief, right?
mm,
And so once you realize that, you can absolutely be just as effective in the boardroom as you can be on the ball field, right? And you can be inside that gym.
If not more so. All right. I think we've certainly dug into this one a lot. It's one of our favorite things to talk about. And I thought we've managed to cover quite a few of our Instagram posts. So if you don't follow us, please follow us at FitFiliate or the FitFiliate podcast on Instagram. We're our $1 Million Coach program. We've got our MDCP podcast as well as clearly this podcast, which should be a must listen to. If you're watching on the YouTubes, like, subscribe, the same as on your platform. And if you know someone who will benefit from our content, please share it with them. And I'm going to say it, reach out, book a call. We're not selling. We just want to talk to you. And
should just see what the difference in coaching is.
Yeah, that's right. Just, when you see it, you can't unsee it. And I have to say, from my personal experience, you've been a great coach to me and a mentor on different levels. So I know how it can work in both ways. And it's not my nature to blow smoke up your ass, let's face it. But, I'm grateful for the journey that's taken me now nearly 3 years and still continues. So thank you.
I learned more from coaching you guys anyway, so I appreciate that.
All right. I will see you on the next one. It's good to be back.
Bye-bye.